We cannot be talking
Nope.
Pornhub with finances. Or, I mean, actually, maybe we should be because that's more income.
I know. It's like, do we want to talk about like our honest living or unhonest livings?
I mean, I think it's an honest living either way.
Because I'm kind of tired. Yeah, I'm tired of like the traditional honest living or honest earnings.
That 9 to 5, I know. Hey, dropouts. This is Crystal.
And Stacy, and this is the High Life Dropouts, where we process all the things in life we were deeply,
woefully, and egregiously unprepared for.
So buckle up. It's wild out there. Hey, dropouts. This is our finance and investment, but it's going to definitely be talking about finances. And we actually have a special guest today. So hi, Crystal.
Hi, I'm excited for our special guest.
Me too. So our special guest is our friend that we met at the place that Crystal and I both worked. And she became a really good friend. She was one of those adult friendships. So we were like, she seems really cool. We don't know how to approach her. We want to be friends with her. And then we became friends. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Rocio.
Hi, everyone, or hello, dropout. My name is Rocio. And yes, I met Crystal and Stacy back in the day at our place of employment.
Trauma bonds. They persevere.
We're really excited to have you. And I know that today we're going to talk a little bit about finances. We'll give like the background and financial dynamics here. And then we'll talk about any like anxieties or stigma around talking about finances. And then we'll try to react to some financial advice that we've received. And then we'll share how we budget and how we invest. And then maybe we'll finish off with some advice. You know, I'm not the best at advice, but I know Crystal and probably Rocio are. So
finance. I'm struggling. But
so we'll jump into that. Should we say what we're drinking?
I'm just drinking some water because this is a serious talk. We cannot be talking Pornhub with finances. Or, I mean, actually, maybe we should be because that's more income.
I know. It's like, do we want to talk about like our honest living or unhonest livings?
I mean, I think it's an honest living either way.
Because I'm kind of tired. Yeah, I'm tired of like the traditional honest living or honest earnings.
That 9 to 5, I know. Sitting in the feet pick.
I'm drinking like a sparkling CBD drink. So it helps me focus like after like 30 minutes of drinking it. Yeah, I'm making a big dinner tonight, so I need to figure that out.
I'm currently drinking water, but I feel like after a few minutes of this conversation, I'm going to have to open up a bottle of wine.
Yes.
And you'll probably understand why in a few minutes.
Oh, it's going to get intense. Love it.
So my financial dynamics are Jason and I are married. So dual income. We both make 6 figures, and we have a daughter who attends public school. And we are not homeowners, we're renters, and we live in the Portland metro area.
So I was going to say my name, but I feel like
I know, me too. I was too.
She, her, Aya. Okay, so I actually own a house, or I guess honestly, I don't own it because I'm paying on it. But yes, technically, I'm a home owner. Currently, I am married. I'm hoping for forever. We'll be married, and we have one income, which is mine. So it's just me, but I also make 6 figures as of just recently, honestly, in this last year. So I don't have any children, but I have pets that cost a lot of money, probably not as much as a child, but still a lot of money.
Yeah. So my financial dynamic is I am a single income, single, not married or with a partner. I am a homeowner. And if I were to calculate my my bonuses, I would be at 6 figures. So we'll just say that base is like shy of like 6 figures, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. For sure. You guys, do you think we're the best people to give this conversation, considering like people out there make
that actually make a lot of money?
We actually comparatively make a lot of money.
I think we're relatable. I don't listen, it's not how much you earn, it's how long you can keep it.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we're going to get into this conversation later or if now is a good time, but honestly, I feel like when you're being transparent about how much money you're making, you're able to also give some sort of advice on how you spend it and how you budget.
Mhm.
Because let's say there
Yeah.
are people that are not making six figures, or let's say that you're only making 50 or 60 a year. And
Mhm.
realistically, how do you budget with that? Like my
Mhm.
first job out of college was 50 something. And I look back and it was a good time. I was spending money on going out a lot and I was renting at the time. But when you start looking at it that
Mhm.
way, it's like, how did I even budget
Right.
back then with that amount of money versus now that I make more, almost double, and
Mhm.
I feel like I'm always financially struggling.
That is such
It's
a good
be
point, Ro, because I
Mhm.
always feel bad when I say, or like when I talk to my family. So my brother, he has like three kids and he makes probably half of what I make, maybe not even half. And I feel bad ever complaining about like not having money to do things because and from his perspective, I have so much more and I don't have kids. So it's like
Mm.
I should have a lot more disposable income to utilize or to save or to invest. And so like I shouldn't be complaining. So I always feel like I have to like not appear to be struggling because people will think that
Oh.
I'm like being dramatic. You know what I mean?
I can totally
Mm.
relate to that. And where I also feel like when I tell, either my friends or my family that this is how much I make, it is different from what they make.
Mhm.
And they automatically think that I have a lot of disposable income. But
Mhm.
then, as I stated earlier, I am a single income. I own a home or, I pay a mortgage on a home. And along with that comes a lot of bills, a lot of, and taxes just
Totally.
went up. And there's so many other things and like costs associated to just living nowadays that
I
when you think about it, even my friends that make less than I do, but are dual income, when you add it all together, they're actually making a lot more than I am. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah, I think that's where the stigma around talking about finances comes in, right? There's this like, oh, we have to do it's always a dance when whatever we're
Mhm.
talking about. Like, do we talk about this? Do we not? What do we actually say? What are we actually supposed to disclose? Like, I want to be really open and transparent, but Jason doesn't like for me to share a lot of things. So I like to just be like, hey, I make this much money and this is, how we spend it and this is how we break it down. And going back to Rocio, what you said about making like 50,000, I was making like 40,000 out of college too. And that was probably the happiest I was ever, like I was ever in my
Oh,
life with
absolutely.
money.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like we were
Same.
so carefree. We could pay rent,
Yeah.
right? And it was just like so much cheaper to live. And then partying was so much easier and like stress free. Eating whatever we wanted, but maybe that, as you get older, your health kind of factors into everything. So I
Mhm.
get that, but like I think money really is not the best way to compare yourself to people,
Mhm.
because it's so different and it changes people so much.
I think it's interesting because back then even before, like during college, when I literally made no money at all, but I felt like I just had more freedom to do things, which is interesting because the more money you have, you would think you'd have more time to do stuff, which just doesn't seem to be true. But I feel like also in that time period, it was like you were pretty level set with all of your peers, which made it easier to plan things. And everyone was down to like just do things like the cheap way or on the cheap, or we're just, because we were all at that same level. So I feel like it was just like a different time and a different experience. And I feel like sometimes the more money you get, the more money becomes almost poisonous in a sense, because you're just like kind of beholden to it in a way where you don't ever want to lose your standard of living that you've made. So you're like always like worried about it almost.
Yeah, I can see that. And I just feel like, the older that we get,
Mhm.
and like, what's the song like more money, more problems? I mean, that's
Hmm.
absolutely true because
For
you have
sure.
more responsibilities. You inquire, and everyone's a little bit different, but sometimes you inquire more debt or you're now trying to live to this new standard of living and where it's
Mhm.
always a constant,
Mm.
I have to spend, what I make because I have this new standard of living and I can't go
Mhm.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you get like an elevated job, you have more responsibilities, but you're making more money.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just so hard. It's so hard to maintain the balance because you do want to be like proud of yourself and want to be like, oh, I have this income now and I can go do all these things and all these fun things. And then reality hits and you're like, fuck, I
For sure.
this is not good.
I always tell everyone if I could make the same amount of money that I make now, but work retail again, or just something that was very
Stress-free.
stress-free, mind numbing. I'm just folding clothes. I'm just like chilling. I would totally do it again. If I could just like do that, I would be so happy. I feel like maybe it's just like the job that we do. I would totally go back.
Yeah.
Totally. But I feel like we have more responsibilities now too, and that's what makes it more stressful.
I think real honestly, the cost of living has increased significantly. Like everything costs more. Like no one wants to call it inflation, but everything definitely costs more. I think there's even an article that says what used to be $100,000 is now the new $300,000 in salary.
I can
And
see that.
yeah,
For
that's
sure.
because the cost of living has everything, like going to the doctor, groceries, utilities, everything. I mean, we are very fortunate to be able to live in a place where we have hydropower, so our electricity is a little bit less than other places in the world, but definitely like internet, phones, all these extra things that we didn't have before,
That we can't live without.
that we can't live without.
Absolutely.
I worked at an apartment complex, and I remember going through like they have like an old Rolodex of like what rent used to cost. This was like in 2016, and I remember looking at it, and in the 90s, I think they were renting out apartments for like $150 to $200 a month. It was like crazy, and I was like, that's so
Gosh.
insane because a 2-bedroom at that place at that time was $800. I thought was astronomical. And now that same place, it's doubled in the amount that rent costs. So it's about 1,600 for a 2-bedroom there, and I'm just like, that is so insane because it's not a nice spot. And I thought $800 was too much for like what you were getting. So I can't even imagine. Like it's so crazy to see. And that was like 200 to like, $800 over like, 3 decades. And then in like 3 years, it went from 800 to like 1,600. It's like insane.
Yeah, it's very crazy. And that's why, like, a lot of people will throw around their privilege and say, like, oh, it pays to play with the housing market. And I'm like, are you kidding? For a house that I want, that I think is a reasonably priced house in the Portland area, I cannot get that. I would never be able to find a house for $500,000 that it doesn't need to be fixed up or isn't in a like the taxes aren't, crazy. Because I think people will just think that you have this house and you have this, dollar sign tied to it. And then there aren't all these other bills that come through with it. And that's why I'm just like, I can't buy a house right now because I don't pay market rent.
Right.
I don't pay market rent. And if I paid market rent, I'd probably be like houseless, honestly. It doesn't make sense for me to buy a house if I can't find a house that I even like or want for $500,000. And $500,000 is a lot of money. That's
$500,000.
real big money.
It's $500,000. Like that's a lot.
That's so
And you're not
much
going to find
money.
anything decent and cheaper than that.
No, it is crazy money.
That's so wild. I just think about what $500,000 got you when I was like in 2009, 2010, when I was like in high school. And I'm like, you could get a huge McMansion.
I can move to San Antonio or Katy, Texas, or these little small towns around Texas, because I'm always telling Jason we should move back and get a McMansion with a pool.
You'd be like living the dream. I know. I come visit you all the time.
My taxes will be crazy, but whatever.
I'm glad I bought when I did because my interest rate is like 2%. But right now it's like 6 to 10%. Could you imagine paying 10% interest on a $500,000 loan?
Yeah, you'll be paying more in interest than you're on your house payment.
That's so wild to me. That's like the same as like credit cards, when they try to get you with all these perks, but then it's like a 25% interest rate.
Yeah.
And you're like, why is it 25%? You're like, I'm just paying interest, not even paying my bill off.
They're like, because we know that you need the money now. We can just gouge you. Yeah, for sure.
Gosh. I'm going to ask a question. Did any of your family like talk to you about finances growing up? Anything like how to save, how to prepare? Did any of that come up with family?
Absolutely not. Yep. None of it. It was a foreign concept to us. It was the idea of debt was just something that we didn't consider or think about, especially with my family background. Getting out credit cards or anything like that was just a no-no. You just didn't do that. So you basically spent what you have. And I to this day, I still kind of use that, mindset, and where I have very, very minimal credit card debt. I have credit cards, but I have very minimal credit card debt compared to, everything else. The money was like, just make enough to make ends meet and you'll be fine.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of my family too. We were always like paycheck to paycheck, or even sometimes below that, where we had to pick out which bills we wanted to pay for the month because we couldn't afford other ones. But definitely, I felt like there was a lot of stress. And this is why, as a mom, I don't want to put that stress on Marcella. Like, we were just told a lot about, like, oh, this is how much we make, and that's too expensive. And we can't afford that. And, our light's going to be cut off this month, or the gas is going to be cut off next month, or whatever. But that was the thing too, Rocio. No one applied for credit cards. You didn't, I don't think anyone even knew. No one even taught me about credit cards. I didn't get my first credit card till I was like 23 or 24. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I did not want to use it. And
Mhm.
I didn't realize that it actually built your credit, like
Right.
building your credit up. But nobody talks about that. No one was talking about like credit and credit scores and all of that. I just didn't know. I felt so clueless.
Oh yeah. Well, and my parents didn't know, so they didn't know any of
Mm-hmm.
that either.
Same.
They just
Mm-hmm.
knew what they were told or what they've heard, but they didn't
Mm-hmm.
know anything about credit. They didn't know anything about that. And the first time that they did learn about credit was when they were first going through the process of buying a home,
Mm-hmm.
and we had to buy a home because we were getting kicked out of the house that we were living in. And at that point, I was in high school and we had never owned a home. My parents had never owned a home. We were, they like, our savings was like a little like hole in the wall that my mom would keep, her savings in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember like as a child, kind of seeing her, kind of pack in some money into this little hole in the wall, literally this little hole in the wall. And that was like our savings.
Yeah.
So yeah, whatever they call it, like the money under the mattress or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But
The
yeah,
coffee can in the
similar. Yep,
backyard.
yep,
Yep.
exactly.
In the yeah,
In
in the ground.
the, in the ground somewhere. So that's kind of, that was our savings. So we didn't talk about credit. We didn't talk about finances really, except for, my parents were like, just make sure you go to school and you make enough money so you don't have to live like us.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was it. They didn't care like what we did or, whatever, but as long as we weren't in the same situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Definitely how my dad was like, I don't ever want y'all to feel like you have to work this hard or work as hard as I have to provide for your families.
Mm-hmm.
He would always tell us that. And I was like, okay.
So I guess I'm different. So my family's always been pretty open about like finances. I think when we were really, really young, we didn't really have a lot of money, but my mom and my dad were really blessed because my grandma and my grandpa owned their house outright. Like they've been in this area I feel like they're settlers. I feel like they came over on a wagon. I don't really freaking know, but I feel like it's been a generational thing. And so they were really lucky that they already had that starting point. But they had no money that was their own to take care of us. And then once they got off WIC and all that stuff. And I think by the time after the Enron ordeal, my dad got laid off. They revamped their finances and my dad got a better job. And I would say we became middle class. And that's all it was like a whole thing. It was like my mom and my dad got a financial investor. And like from then on, it was like something that we talked about all the time. They made us talk to the financial investor and put money in because they were convinced we were going to be millionaires if we just saved $10 a month from the age of 12 until we retired. And then I pulled all of my money out of that when I went to college because I had no money and my dad was devastated. But for all of that, I still have no idea how to invest things. But like for credit cards and things like that, like my mom and my dad put me on theirs as an authorized user for, I don't know, when I was like 18. So for me, it's something we've always talked about, but kind of in the same vein, probably because my mom immigrated from the Philippines where she literally had nothing. I think money was really top of mind for her and trying to figure out how she could make sure that, as like you're talking about, Stacey, that we didn't have to have the same kind of upbringing that she had. And so for her, the way that she did that was to know as much as she could in partnership with my dad about finances to pass it on to us to make sure that we could make those better choices in the future. But I also did 4-H where we sold cows every year and we had to like learn about how much goes into feeding a cow and then selling it.
I
And what our
love
profit
4-H.
margins were. Me too. I kind of miss it sometimes. And so I think a lot of that helped with like finance and being a little more financially savvy. But like I said, I didn't follow any of it because I took all of my money out of that, whatever that account was. I was like, I have $3,000. I'm so rich. I'm gonna buy myself a computer. You know what I mean? Like,
And then you have like $500 left.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything left in that account because then I was like, before I got married, that guy was like, have you talked about finances with your husband? And I was like, I mean, I kind of know. Jordan's more of a spender. I'm more of a saver. He's like, then you guys aren't going to work out. It's going to be a failed marriage. And then I was like, I don't like you. And we're no longer going to communicate with you as a financial expert. And now I think about it and I go, well, there is some truth to marrying someone who has completely opposite financial tendencies than you, because it does make it a little more difficult when you're talking finances, because he's like, oh, we have it, we should spend it. And I'm like, well, we have it, we should save it.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, why? We're all going to die. And I'm like, yes, but we might not. So like,
some of us might not. We're living forever.
some of us might live to our 80s. I don't know. So I just
That's so funny because I'm not a spender and I don't really know how to save. Like I'm still like I still put a lot of that pressure and responsibility on Jason because I feel like he just knows a lot more than I do about that stuff. But I just have so much anxiety about money because I didn't grow up with a lot that I'm constantly checking my bank account every single damn day. Like it's going to change. I check my freaking checking account. I don't even spend any money and I just like check it.
it's the
I'm just
same
like,
every
what's
day.
and Jason's like, you're so weird. Why are you checking? I'm just like, I know I'm so weird. I know it's just my OCD. Like I just like freak out because what if one day it's just gone?
No, I do that too.
See? Okay. I'm not that crazy.
I do that
Okay.
too. And I've actually have caught like some issues with like some things.
Fraudulent.
So yeah.
Oh, see, that's good.
Yeah.
See? Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't happen all the time. Like it's rare, but there has been some instances in where that has happened.
Mm-hmm.
I check mine too, and I think they're fraudulent charges, and then realize they're not. They're just me because I spent it, and then I'm sad because I'm a saver. But I guess Jordan's has like rubbed off on me. But I used to check all the time too, though, because I used to overdraft my account. So like when I was in college all the time, so I'd have like hundreds of dollars in overdraft fees. So I'd be checking to make sure things wouldn't bounce, and then they would always bounce anyway. So,
but those were the days we lived life on the edge like that. We did. We did.
Yeah,
we were like, you know what? It held us accountable a little bit. Yeah, but it also held us accountable. Like we were like, okay, well, I actually don't have any money. Like I can't do anything.
Get someone pick me up. I have no gas money.
Right. Versus like now we're like, we have money, right? We can spend our money, but some of us choose not to. Or it's like, do I really want to spend my money on this, or do I want to wait for next year when we take this, 4-week trip somewhere? Like you really have to just figure out what your priorities are.
As you guys get older and you make more money, do you find that you are more prone to giving it away to other people and being more generous with it, or you are prone more to like trying to keep it?
Good question. I feel like I've always been such a giving person. Like I remember like my first job, like real job outside of, working in the orchard and picking fruit, since the age of 4, and where I actually had like a paycheck was when I turned 16. And my first job as a legal employee was working at Domino's Pizza. And I remember whenever I would get my checks, I would go and it would just be like the grocery store or like at any growing up in Hood River, all we had was Walmart. Even if I went to Walmart, I would just get little things for like my family. Like I get little things for like my siblings, and I have a younger brother. So like just even if it was just like something
That's super
small,
sweet. Yeah.
but I would always get them something like with my little like $100 and something paycheck.
Totally.
But back then, like it was a lot, and I could fill my car for $5.
Relax.
And drive to school and drive to work and, get, my McDonald's in the morning before going to school.
Yeah.
That was a life. Yep. That was a life.
I don't know. I think I'm kind of twofold. I like to see my money. Obviously, I like to check it every day, see where it's at. But I also feel like I'm generous when we do things, right? Yep. Like if I'm going to invite my friends to dinner or something, I'm definitely probably going to take the larger portion of the bill and of the check or pay for the whole thing, right? Yeah. Or like when I go see my family, I definitely give a lot to my nieces and nephews. Because I'm like, what am I going to do with this?
Kids are expensive.
I think, but I don't feel like I do give a lot to charity and donate a lot, but I don't know if I necessarily give it away to like people, just whoever. Yeah.
Yeah. You definitely have to. Yeah. For me, it was
selective
with people that Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Like if I get invited to dinner, like I'm bringing dessert or bringing something,
Mm-hmm.
with the whole mentality of I'm not going to show empty handed. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really is. Yes, it depends. And I also feel like I'm also more conscious about it and where you do have to be a little more selective and
Mhm.
of who and when and what, you give.
For sure.
Um,
Yeah.
especially nowadays and where, well, back in the day, like I didn't have to worry about paying rent or a mortgage. Like all I had to
Mm-hmm.
worry about was going to school and going to work. So I could like freely give the little that I had.
Right.
And now it's like, okay, I have to think about all my bills. I have to pay about I have to think about my mortgage. I have to think about my pets,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
and with all of the different things that have been happening with my pets literally the last 3 months, and
Mhm.
where I don't have as much disposable income as I used to. So now I have to really think about that and, what and when can I spend what I have.
I always feel like when you start to make money, it's like the Scrooge effect, or like, I don't know what the opposite of a Scrooge is. It's like one or the other. You tend to either go one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think it's interesting. I think, but also as you get older, I think you're right, Ro. You have to be more selective of, which it feels weird, but you kind of are more selective about who. It's like your time, right? Who you're giving your time to. It's like who you're giving your money to. But I think a good call between like how Stacy and I do money differently is like we went out to a birthday party in, was it Long Beach? Where was it? Lincoln City. One of the women there had paid for a meal, and so we were going to Venmo her money back. And Stacy sends like the meal, I think was like $100 total. So I'm like, okay, my portion's like, like I did the math. It's like $25. I give $25. And I'm like, Stace, how much did you send over? And she's like 65. And I'm like, holy shit, Stacy. Like, okay, I didn't know that. Now I've got to think, okay, add
Like,
$35. I guess that's what we're doing. I
well,
didn't realize.
because I tip at like 25-30% these days because we have to show our love.
So that is how I know Stacy and I. I'm like yep, this is the exact. Stacy's like, let me pay the whole bill via Venmo.
But I also think that's a really good representation of how you perceive of how much to give,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like that. Yeah. So like, for example, if I'm in a financial situation or if compared to my friends and where I like to go to a lot of concerts, I haven't been to many lately because of my current financial
Yeah.
situation with like my pet. But before all of this, when I did have, disposable income, if there was a show that I really wanted to go to and like shows in Portland are like what, like 30, 40, $50.
Mm-hmm.
If my friends couldn't afford it or they couldn't pay for a show, then I would be like, you know what, don't worry about it. Just come and join me
Yeah. Yeah.
or whatever, and then you do, so it's like it's one of those things and where if we're going out to dinner and like I'll cover it or whatever.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's how
And
I do it with friends too. I'm
yeah,
like, maybe you get dinner and I'll buy the tickets or whatever, vice
right,
versa.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, almost like a relationship.
Yeah.
Where you get one thing, I get the other. And it's
Yes.
really
Yeah.
dependent on your financial situation. So
Yeah.
if Stacey feels like she's able to put in more toward the dinner, that's a good thing, and where she
Mhm.
is financially stable or in a situation where she is able to contribute a little bit more than maybe somebody else.
It's true. Because I think that's the thing too. When I have friends where sometimes I'm like, oh, I'll just cover some of that stuff. They start to get really awkward about it because
Ooh.
I feel like after,
Mm.
especially if it's someone who I don't want to like makes less than me and they can't really, consistently afford to go out. I feel like
Mm.
they start to get like weird about it because then like they're like you're paying all the time, because sometimes I get that way with my friend Erin in Florida because she'll pay all the time for things. She will not let me pay for anything, whether I visit
Mm.
her or whether she comes here. Like in that relationship I get uncomfortable, but I have friends also who feel that way too because they're like, oh, you just pay all the time. And so
Mm.
how do you guys deal with that? Because I feel like you want to have a good time but you don't want people to feel, I guess, uncomfortable about it, but maybe they just don't want to go
Yeah.
with me and they just don't want it to say, and their excuse is they have no money. And I'm like, that's fine, I'll pay. And then they're like, damn it.
No, yeah. I mean, that is tough. And
It's
I
hard.
feel like it really depends on your friendship, right? Where like if that
For
happens
sure.
with some of my friends, I got the ticket this time and then another show comes up and then they proactively reach out with, hey, did you hear that so and so is coming? And I'm like, oh yeah, if you want to get them, let me know. And then it's like I've already gotten like 2, 3 shows and they're like, oh no, 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 don't worry, I'll get this one.
Mhm.
And it's kind of like one of those, like, you try to balance each
Yeah.
other, but it also really depends because then you also have those friends where like you always feel like you give, and you never
Yeah.
get anything back.
Yeah.
And it's all like,
Yep.
well, now it's a weird and awkward situation for me that even though I am like a giving person
Mhm.
naturally, and where now I need to be even more selective, going back to the whole like selection of like who you give your time and your, just your energy or whatever. It's
Mhm.
now it's on that where, okay, now I have to be more selective because I do all these things for this person, and I'm not saying that they have to,
Sure.
because of whatever
Mhm.
situation, but at the same time it almost feels like they're taking advantage of me.
Right.
So it also gets into that tricky situation, and where, well, now I don't really care about the money, I'm just thinking about, are you even a real friend?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think that's why I only have so I don't know how to really answer that question because I think that's why I only have like 3 or 4 friends.
He cuts
Because
everyone else out.
but I don't ever have that issue. It's kind of
Which is
like,
probably good.
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, okay, we go out one night and I pay. Okay, I'll go out another night, you pay. Or like, I got you this night, I got you this time. Like it's never awkward or
Mhm.
weird. But yeah, I don't know. I would feel so uncomfortable, I think, in that situation.
But I feel like, but to that point, you do have to be friends and stay
Yeah.
friends with people that aren't like that. And, and the friends that you do have, that are not usually like that.
I have friends with like the similar, like very similar lifestyle as I do. And I think that's for a reason because I don't want to get myself in that situation. Um,
Truth bombs.
I don't want to. And I know that like if you don't want to come or if you don't want to do something, you can just say no. You have a choice.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I don't ever want like someone to feel like they have to bankroll me. And I don't want any one of my friends to think that I have to bankroll them.
Money, man. It's one of those things. You can offend anyone any which way. You can buy them too
Oh,
much,
yeah.
buy them not enough. It's
Or not
crazy.
enough. Yep.
Nobody's happy.
Yeah, for
And I
sure.
think that's really hard too, because like, how do you, it's great, that you mentioned that you have friends that have the same lifestyle as you, but then what happens with the friends that you don't have similar lifestyles and where you're trying to do something nice, but they can't, or the other way around?
I think Stacey and I kind of had a conversation about that on the way back from Lincoln City. I think we are talking about my birthday or something. And I was talking about how sometimes when I'm planning things, because I have such a wide variety of friends who make from X all the way down to Z, like trying to find an activity that we can all go do that is like not, because $25 to
Mhm.
like me, whatever, it's not that much money. $25 to Stacy,
Mm,
probably not that much money, but $25 to some of my friends is like, that's a lot. That's like groceries for them for like
No
the week.
money.
yeah.
So it's
Mhm.
like, how do you, trying to balance those things without making them feel uncomfortable when the rest of us are like,
Right.
yeah, now we're going to go out and get drinks and we're going to do this. And then, it's like, it's kind of hard. And I don't know the answer to that because we're all in such different spaces. You kind of have to be cognizant of that and their circumstances, but it's just like
Mhm.
also, I guess that's where they're friends and you just have to be like open and honest. I would hope that they would let me know because then I'm like, oh, I'll
Hmm.
get you. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it. But,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
if you don't tell me, I can't.
I don't know what I don't know.
Right.
Mhm.
But also, I want to do things that I want to do. So, like, and I don't want to,
Right.
so you're like,
And I want
And
to
you
do
don't
them
want to
with
offend
you because you're
anyone.
my friend.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally. It goes back to like, I think I think it was you. You were like, "Oh, can I ask you how much you make?" And I told you and I was like, "Girl, you better ask for more."
Yeah. That's why I'm making that new, that's why I got that raise.
Mhm.
Good for you,
Mhm.
Ro.
Yeah.
I went out and asked for it. I was like, "This is market. I feel like I should be compensated fairly." And yeah,
Isn't that
Mhm.
shitty though? That like they're like,
it is very
sure.
shitty.
And then
It
you're
is
Totally.
like,
very
I could have
shitty.
been making this the whole time.
Another thing is, that's the thing about like that I love about transparency when it comes to finances and how much people make, especially as professionals,
Mm-hmm.
is I do like that transparency, And at first, I feel like we're in that generation of where like you just don't talk about finances or you don't talk about how much you make. But
Mhm.
I feel like I call bullshit on that. Like I feel like we should be talking about this because then how do I know that I'm in an equitable place, compared to my
Mm-hmm.
peers? And if I'm doing the same or more than, a colleague or whatever in the same department or job description, with the same or less experience, like I should be able to be making a fair wage.
Yep.
Agreed.
Jason told me, he was like, why don't you just ask people where I work as open record? So he's like, why don't you just like get how much everyone's making in your department and see where you're at if you're so worried about it? And I was like, I'm such a white male thing to say, right? And I was like, well, I'm not so worried about it. I'm just
What do
worried
you know?
about, I just want to know like if I fall in line where I need to be, basically. Like, am I working, you know, or what is it, like work your wage? Am I working my wage?
He's like,
Right.
you're like, I just wanted you to listen. I didn't want you to listen to problem solve.
I know. I'm like, why do you always have to like do like tell me these things? They're so like ludicrous sometimes.
But also remember, Stacey, you're also not working at wage because you're also a woman and you're also a woman of color.
Yeah.
So
I'll never be working at wage. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's all be realistic about that.
Yep.
It's so true.
I was just talking to my dad about my little brother because he just got a job, and he was like, he was like, oh yeah, your little brother was like talking to this other like foreman or whatever, and he was like asking Kyle how much he made. And he was like, oh, whatever. I could tell you right now, though, it's more than what you're making. And you should probably, because I won't tell you, but it's definitely more than what you're making. And you should ask for a raise. And I was like, but Dad, how does he know? He didn't share and they're not sharing their money. Maybe that
and
guy's
it's like you should ask.
I
right.
know.
And you're saying that, like at least give him an idea of what to ask for, because why would he know, especially if it's his first job?
I know. And then I was like, but then what if you tell him you're making whatever and the other guy's like, oh, actually I'm making more than you? Like you wouldn't know because you didn't share. Why do you think you're making more than him? Like did someone, like who told you that, first of all? But I think that's interesting because we all have that kind of problem. Even with I have a group chat with some of my people from my old department, and we talk about being very transparent with like how much we want to make and stuff like that. But I don't think any of us have ever actually said to each other, and we worked in the same department, how much we each made, which would have been beneficial to us as we're like negotiating our wages. But like anytime it kind of comes up, it's kind of like one of those like, oh yeah, I wish I was making more. And it's like, well, how much are you like making them now?
We all wish we were making more. Yeah.
But no one would like, no, it's like, we're so close to like telling each other, but like, we just kind of miss it. Like, we don't really want, like, it feels weird.
Yeah. I can see how I can see like both ways, like how it would be weird for someone if they made more, significantly more than someone else, but also like if you frame it in a way of like, I'm making this much. And if that other person was like, I'm not even making close to that, then offering like how to support that person to ask for that much, or how do you go and like talk to your boss to say like, look, we talked about this and we looked at this and we have the same portfolio and we're doing the same things. Like, why are we at such different pay rates?
Well, I think people get really uncomfortable when they're making the least amount, right? Because I feel like when I have those conversations with people that are making less, sometimes they'll be very, because like, I guess, I don't know if it's like you feel embarrassed, because even me, when I used to make less than other people, you kind of want to bolster it. So it seems like you were making more, which is like a weird thing. But like, you're like, oh no, like, because I feel like when you're making less than everyone else, I feel like there's kind of like a weird sense of like inadequacy that goes with that. And so you don't actually want to share that.
I can kind of relate to that because, and probably more so recently than before, because before in other roles, I feel like I was always the one making more than my counterparts or my peers. But then when I got into a different, essentially more higher of a role, and then also learning that it was less than what other people were making. So it kind of gets you into this weird. So I've been in, I guess I would just say I've been in both situations, and I can see and I can understand where that feeling comes from and where there is that sense of inadequacy. And especially coming from a place where you felt like, oh, like, not to say that like, I felt like I was the shit or anything like that, but and where you just felt like,
well, you are.
To the feeling of there's this inadequacy that you just feel where like, I guess I'm not as smart or as good as I thought I was.
Or I didn't negotiate as well, or I did something wrong for them to pay me less.
Right.
Which is like a bonkers thing to think.
I undersold myself.
Yeah, it's my fault. No, it's not your fault, but it makes you feel that way.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
I totally felt that way when I was moving within the place that we work from one department to another. They lowballed me so much, where I was like, can you please give me the criteria as to like how the role that I'm in now is making X amount? And it's HR. They know what they're doing. And how this new role is only making $1,000 more.
You're like, what's happening here?
Of a gross pay?
Yeah.
Like, no. No, thank you. With a significantly larger portfolio? No, no.
So
Yeah, and I had to I had to navigate through all of that, and they made it like it was this big deal, and like I was causing them to do all this work, and like it took them 2 weeks to finally like finalize things. And I'm like, was it really that bad for me to ask for $12,000 more than the 3,000 that you were gonna give me?
when it's in their budget.
And
Mm-hmm.
figuring out how much other people were making who didn't even do shit in that department.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, you're not going to come for me like that.
That's why they don't want us talking to each other about money.
Exactly.
That's why they don't want us talking to each other about money. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Especially that department, Stacey. Like they should have been very
Yeah.
equitable in their pay
Mhm.
practices.
For me, it was just like, what's the internal purpose for not paying someone that you're hiring internally? Like you're investing into this person internally, investing all of this skill set, and you're gonna lowball them and just expect them to be like, sure, yeah, I'm gonna take it because supposed to be grateful to have a job. I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way.
And that's why you're not there anymore.
It is wild. That's why they don't want us to share anything.
Right. Because they can offer that same position for way less to somebody else that doesn't know.
If someone came up to you in your department, well, Stacey, I guess it's a little different for you because it's public record. But if someone
Sure.
just was like, hey, how much do you make? Would you tell them?
I would.
I would now.
Yeah, me too now.
If I was working at the place I work,
Yeah.
would I do
before.
it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, before?
Yeah.
No, because it's the culture. It's the culture. It's all about the work culture, I think, and how safe they let you feel and talk about those things. When you say you have a speak up culture, then you cannot speak up. I'm sorry. That's not, those things don't go hand in hand. That's like that's an OG saying that they call themselves an OG. You know what I mean? Like you don't do that. You just, everybody already knows.
Awkward.
I
That's so
tell people
crazy.
now
Yeah, me
because
too.
I don't
for you.
want people
Yeah.
to be in the same situation that I was in, and I still feel like I'm in. So yeah,
Mhm.
I just want to make sure that doesn't happen to somebody else.
That's good.
Ro and I single-handedly changing the culture.
Yes, changing the culture.
Please pray for
One
us.
Two women
salary
at a time.
Exactly. Maybe one day Ro will come to my department and we can work together.
As long as I'm making decent money.
Well, with that, friends, I think we're actually going to split this episode up into 2 parts. So look forward to some double drops this weekend. You'll get part 1 today and then part 2 tomorrow. In part 2, you can expect us to talk about investing, whether we do it or not, some advice we've received, and as well, we're going to talk about our budgets, what we do in case of emergencies, as well as just how we budget for everyday life. So with that, thank you for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow. Stay wild.